the University of the West Indies Mona campus. She holds a PhD in curriculum, teaching and learning in teacher education. She also has a master's degree in the education of philosophy and a diploma in the education specializing in geography and social studies. I present to you Dr. Gentles.
Okay, so the mic is all set up. I have another mic on my back, so if I look a bit odd, right? but if I speak like this, can you hear me?
Yes, we
can. Okay, right. So I kind of prefer to use my teacher voice because it makes me a little bit, makes it easier. Right. Okay. So I'm not standing in your way, am I, sir? Oh, okay. Okay, all right. So the topic I'm presenting today is looking at the changing role of Jamaican teacher college lecturers, issues and concerns. And the aims of my presentation are to share with you the results of an ongoing piece of research that I'm doing, where I'm looking at the response of teachers college lecturers to what is a changing landscape of teacher education in Jamaica. So why am I saying there's this changing landscape? Well, many things are happening, but one of the major changes is that about 8 or 9 years ago, our Ministry of Education decided that they wanted to upgrade the status of teachers so that teachers entering the classroom in Jamaica would now have to have a 4-year Bachelor in Education degree. And this was an upgrade from what was in effect before, which was a 3-year teaching diploma. Now, with that upgrade came an upgrade to the teachers' colleges, which are our publicly funded institutions. We have about 8 of them at the moment. And it meant that since they were now going to be offering degrees, that they would now be considered tertiary institutions instead of post-secondary training institutions. And that now brought a change for the faculty who staff these institutions. So these college lecturers, as we call them in Jamaica, or teacher educators, were now recognized to be tertiary level educators. And that is what brought about a new expectation that in addition to being a teacher trainer or lecturer, they must now also take on the role and responsibilities of being a researcher. So why was this so? Well, in Jamaica we have our tertiary quality assurance body, which is the University Council of Jamaica. And they require that all tertiary programs need to be accredited, and they require that faculty at tertiary institutions should be engaged in research and production of publications. And this is also in response to the demands of what we are here to talk about, the 4th Industrial Revolution, preparing teachers to have 21st century skills. And all of this, as our acting permanent secretary mentioned yesterday, in all of this, research is a key element. So if we think about the 4th Industrial Revolution and the impact on teaching, teacher training, it requires, among many other things, a change in the ways we understand and manage knowledge in classrooms. So teacher educators, the people who train teachers, have to be capable and competent to help produce teachers with professional competencies to produce and construct, to consume and apply, to teach and share, and to understand knowledge in ways that are flexible, that are dynamic, that are mindful of diverse learning outcomes, aimed at facilitating innovation in ways that will help to drive improvement of practice that is data-driven. So there are changes in the way that we are trying to train our teachers, and that of course requires changes in the way our teacher educators operate. So, going back to the story of the changing landscape. So what is going on? So, the official story is that our teacher educators now are expected to conduct research and publish. And officially, the Teachers Colleges of Jamaica, which is a consortium of the 8 teachers colleges, are forging ahead to comply. The Ministry of Education has recently allocated funding for professional development. So each of the teachers colleges are supposed to be getting about $2 million a year, which they can use towards professional development of their faculty. And this part of this can be used to stimulate and develop research capacity. Also, the Ministry of Education has just approved that each college will be allowed to appoint a person who is a research officer. And this person will be appointed at the level of a senior lecturer. So it's quite a compelling position to try and apply for. So the colleges also are putting on research days. Some are starting journals. Some are funding their lecturers to attend academic conferences as audience members and as presenters. But anecdotally, the story is somewhat different, as it usually is. So the research output is still very low. The quality of scholarship, the confidence levels, the buy-in needs strengthening. And administrative and financial support seems to be inadequate. Okay, let's try it. Oh, sorry. Okay, so recognizing this, my concern was that if our college lecturers are not sufficiently prepared or amenable to becoming producers of research, then the expectations that are there for them will not be realized. So I thought it was really important to try and understand the process of transition, because this understanding might be helpful for improving the buy-in and helpful for more strategic capacity building. So the research questions guiding the research were: how are college lecturers responding to the changing job expectations? What do they think about research as part of their job description? What explains their views, and what are the implications of their views for the success of this transition? So this was a mixed methods sequential design. So phase one was a quantitative survey, which I conducted with about 100 college lecturers from across the 8 teachers' colleges. They were all randomly selected. And phase two, which is now in progress, which is a qualitative part, where I'm conducting semi-structured individual interviews with senior staff and research officers, and I'm using an online format, which I find to be very useful. It's very intimate, and it's really, and it is convenient because they are able to talk with me after work, right? So that's working out really well. In phase one, very quickly, in the survey, I asked them to tick items about reasons for doing research that applied to them. I asked them to respond to 20 items asking about the research culture at their institutions using a 5-point Likert scale. I asked them to provide demographic data, and I also asked them to respond to one open-ended question, which was: what do you think about the move to include research activities in the professional profile of college lecturers? So what have I found so far? So coming out of the quantitative survey, 25% said they rarely or never do research. The other 75% said that they accept that research should be part of their job. 62% say they are doing research, but 40% of that 62% say they're doing it because they're currently enrolled in an academic program which requires them to do research. Most of the research they do, when you break it down, is as consumers. So what they're doing is they're doing research to prepare for teaching. They're supervising students doing research. They're reading published research. They're discussing research with colleagues. They're attending conferences as audience members. But research for the purpose of publication is still very minimal. So what do they think about this expectation? Well, they recognize that administration is expecting them to do research and to build a research culture. And they associate it with professional development and improved teaching performance. They recognize the value. They agree the requirement is good for their college, although I don't really know what they understand by being good for their college. So I need to investigate that more. And some disagree. They say that only those who want to do research should be asked to do it. There should be a choice. And they think that the whole, building a research culture can work, but there are a lot of changes are needed, and therefore the buy-in is low. So from the qualitative interviews now, what explains these views and the lack of buy-in? So this is coming from research officers, senior staff, and from the lecturers themselves who I've spoken to. And what they're saying is that, first of all, the college cultures and the organization of the college cultures are just not ready. They're not ready to become institutions where research is, an integral part of what they do. And this is because expectations for research are not sufficiently linked to the career pathway that's mapped out for them. There's nothing written into their career pathway that speaks about being promoted because you've done research. This is unlike what happens at universities, where doing research and publications counts. You kind of get points for doing research and publications. And this requirement now, it is an unwelcome add-on to what is an already burdensome workload. The teachers' college lecturers are expected to do 18 hours of teaching a week plus one. And that plus one is very nebulous. Plus one refers to supervision of student research and practicum students. These are teachers who go out into the field to do their internships. And sometimes they may have 4 or 5 students who may be, as far as 100 miles away, 20 miles away. So that plus one is huge. And also they have to devote a lot of hours to a myriad of other professional responsibilities, this committee, that committee, curriculum development, program development, etc., etc. Also, the research officers that are being hired, they're not most of them are not specifically trained for the position. They're people who just are interested in helping to develop the research culture. And one person even suggested that the attractiveness of the position is because the position makes you a senior lecturer. So that there's a bit of questions around the readiness of the research officers themselves to drive the change. Also, the professional capacity and confidence for research and publications is lacking. Most of the lecturers will say, look, research and publications was never part of my job description. The pathway to becoming a college lecturer in Jamaica has traditionally been not through your academic qualifications. I mean, you need to have at least a master's degree, but it's not through your fitness for purpose for academia. It's more through the recognition that you are a very good teacher in either the primary or secondary level, and therefore it means you will have something to bring to the table in terms of training teachers. So being a researcher is just not part of the professional identity of our college teachers, college lecturers. And most of them say they have limited experience with conducting research or producing publishable research. Now, in response to the question, but you have a master's degree, you should know how to do research. Many of them will say, yeah, but the master's degree I had was focused on helping me to improve my subject matter content knowledge. Research was not a big part of what I was asked to do. And so therefore, a lot of them, they say, I don't even know where to start. I don't know how to do a piece of research. I don't know how to write it up. I don't know how to publish it. So the willingness to do research is lacking. And lecturers are very reluctant to engage in this transition and to comply with the expectations to be researchers. They're resistant to the change. They're practicing resistance. So they're not doing the research activities. They're just not doing it. They will comply if forced to do so, and there are efforts to get them to come to workshops to develop their skills and to produce research for their own college research days. But this is something that is kind of forced. If it's made mandatory, they will do it. But if it's left to be, if they're asked to volunteer for it, they're just not going to do it. And they're envisaging the whole situation, the whole expectations differently from the administrators and the ministry. So they say, look, we see ourselves as subject specialists. We don't want to do research. We appreciate the utility and the value of research, but we prefer to be consumers of the research output of others. Let the people at UE produce the research. We will read it and use it to our advantage. They feel that before they even embark on this, the whole workload has to be reconfigured and thought about differently. And they also want there needs to be, that the process of accessing financial support needs to be more transparent and structured. Because right now it's very much up to the principals of each college. How much do they value getting the research culture up and running? How much support are they going to give to each lecturer to attend a conference. We all know, we're here, how expensive and costly this exercise is. So, is it that because you're a senior lecturer, you're going to get to go? If you're a junior faculty, you may not. Like that process, there's no structure, there's no transparency, and this needs to be improved. So, what are the implications of the findings for helping to improve this transition? Well, first of all, the colleges are going to have to work strategically to recognize that research, if they want it to be successful, the workloads have to support research as part of the lecturer's job description and career pathway. They need somehow to have, they need to think about it differently, what kind of work they're expecting the lecturers to do and how doing research can fit into this. And they need to start thinking about how do we develop a research culture. We can't do it by forcing people to do it. Maybe they need to try and co-construct the research cultures with the lecturers, not as a top-down mandate, but as something, a sort of, everybody participating to figure out how can we best get this going. And that requires an interrogation of the cultural realities and issues that currently exist, which is kind of why I'm doing the research. So what are the wider implications in closing? Well, and there's nothing new in what I'm saying here. This is the same old story that has plagued our educational reforms for many, many, many years. Again, the idea that if we have policy that's being made to create change, then that can only be successful if what we're asking people to do is grounded in the cultural realities and the challenges that they have. So we're moving towards this fourth industrial revolution, but the story remains the same. We can't expect that just because it's all exciting and there's robots and drones delivering KFC, that sort of thing, that everybody's going to say, yes, we have to sign on, we're going to do research. That's exciting and interesting, but it doesn't change the challenges within the context, the realities that teachers have to deal with, or teacher educators have to deal with. So we need better cultural knowledge of what obtains, what is driving what teacher educators do before we then ask them to change, so that we can use the understanding of what they do to help change what they do, in a sense. So we should not assume that because changes are made to meet the demands of these exciting new trends in the fourth industrial revolution, that buy-in from humans will be seamless. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jattles. Do we have any questions? First of all, I would like you to state your name and the institute that you represent, and then you can ask your question. All right?
Good morning. Clement Lambert from Northern Arizona University and also UWI. Formerly. Dr. Gentles, I thought your presentation was very comprehensive and it touched all the conundrums involved in research and teacher education. But while you were presenting, my question was, why are we approaching the whole subject of research in teachers' college? And we haven't even tied up what educational research on the national landscape. It's not like when we're in medicine, we look at a particular treatment or a particular medication for an ailment, or not as an engineer where there are certain things that you have to perfect. But education research is quite fragmented. And the whole idea is that apart from the paradigm wars and everything that exists, and you mentioned the conundrums of the hours and the responsibilities and culture. You mentioned also important culture. Is it really necessary for teachers' colleges to embark on research, and how exactly are we going to approach? Because at the academy where I work at UWI, there are silos, research silos, and there's not a coherent development of research. So are we trying to take on more than we need to take on without tidying up whatever already exists?
Thanks for that question, and I agree 100%. And when I was doing this presentation and even doing the research, I'm constantly asking myself that question. So I'm able to rationalize, well, yes, we need it to meet the demands of the fourth industrial revolution, and the UCJ requires it. But at the end of the day, I'm really struggling with that myself. Like, why do we need the teacher educators to do research? Should it be a choice? If you want to do it, you do it and you get support. But if you want to remain in teaching alone, maybe that should be a choice, People will say, oh, but all teachers need to do research. But I don't really know why. I don't know if the research should be just for improving your own practice. That I agree with, and that's almost like a given. It's like we all do that as teachers, or we should. But in terms of doing research for publications, I don't know. I'm really struggling with that question myself. So, yes.
Morning, everyone.
Sorry, sir.
Morning, everyone. I'm James, Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. 3 things. I thought your presentation was of contemporary relevance. 2, I would like a PDF copy. And number 3, my question, or let me make a point first. Some time ago, before this ruling party, the former Minister of Education said that research is supposed to be action-based. So it's supposed to be action-driven. And so when we look at it, we can see it more purposeful. It is more engaging, because what will happen is that teachers, and not only teachers, but everyone in the university system, will select a topic to resolve an existing issue. So therefore, it is not only about the cognitive or the psychomotor domain, but it will tap into their affective domain. They will go in the library and ask for that book, or if they are listening to the news and they hear something about their topic, they will stop and listen to that part of the news. So I want through you to explore if that is still a thrust that we should take up, if it was just a suggestion, and so that it can be re-implemented. Because the truth is, research language is difficult. The AP alone turns people away. Yes, they have to cite it in 3 different ways, and it is really difficult. It's really challenging. So even my colleague, sir, you said you're from Arizona, yes. Let's say, for example, the TVET-driven students and educators, you're forcing them to go back to academic. And that's what they're really running away from, So when you do, and then the research is heavily academic. So we still have to package it so that it's very appealing. So I would like us to explore action-based research and see if we probably can utilize other formats other than AP, because there are simpler formats there.
That's what you do action research. If you're writing it up at all, you have to use the AP or another right. But I appreciate what you're saying. And just to say that in the college teachers curriculum, the teachers in training all have to do an action research. So the teacher educators who are assigned to supervise their research have to, supervise them doing this action research. But whether and I don't know if the teacher educators see that as something that they can utilize, for their own research. So, but very good questions that you're putting on the table. I don't know the answers, but
really explore the answers together.
There was this yes.
Julia Martin, you said. Referring to the previous response you made, Dr. Lambert. Is it therefore necessary for us to make that decision that within these institutions there are 2 tracks, research and the academic? Or is it then that do we need to have some of these institutions specializing in research, and how would that work? How do you see that working in the landscape to actually try and engage more persons in research? I think it's very, very important. But part of the challenge is that while a lot of research is being done, so to speak, oftentimes you're not necessarily seeing the products of these research, because the education system, I think, would benefit from really the kind of research that will impact a lot of the problems that we're having in the system, and we're not finding that. So therefore, I don't know how do you respond to that?
Well, 2 things. There are many universities abroad where faculty have a choice. They can either go the research academic track or they can go the teaching track. And that really came about, I think, primarily from many of the female faculty who love teaching and who found it very challenging to do research and publications, and but it doesn't mean that the teaching track is less than. It just means that as educators they're expected to use other people's research findings to improve their practice, and it doesn't mean that you don't do small sort of research projects or you do collaborative professional research within your teaching activities. But it's just that you are then evaluated based on your teaching competence and your I think that's something that that's what the people in teachers' colleges are asking for. Yes, I saw a hand. Yes.
Hi, morning. Thank you. Unfortunately, I came in at the end of it, but it's sufficient. Damien Black, Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission. Comments and possibly a question. I agree with your criticism, although that's my word,
Okay.
with regard to the UCJ, but any entity, sorry, I shouldn't, that speaks to research as a standard. And I think it's almost a misapplication as to the level at which perhaps that standard should be applied. Yes, we speak about the teaching service and research, but then which institution needs to do it? And then obviously from what you're saying, your teacher educators, which level of staff need to be engaged and how to get around. But then that can be reformulated. Dr. Lambert, as he spoke about Northern Arizona, and then you, in one of the implications, you spoke to the workloads to be reformulated. Fine. But I'm certain his experience, or his institution's experience, the experience broadly in the US, is really not a reconfiguration of the workload to make it easier. Given budget cuts, the assault on the academy, etc., that's happening in North America. I mean, people have to be really going the opposite of what is being stated here. So I think literally, as you are saying, it might be best to just appreciate the level of the institution, look at tracks, and then to just go accordingly. I have found it somewhat challenging to see some recommendations that speak to increasing research. I mean, some institutions at levels that there doesn't need to be teaching.
Yeah.
So I concur.
Thank you. And I went to a presentation somewhere and I was blown away when the presenter said, that a recent study shows that 85% of the research that is published in the field of humanities and education is never read by anybody. Whereas in medicine it's different, maybe 50, right. So that speaks to, and that doesn't mean that research is not important, but at the same time, it's, what are we using it for? And right, so that's really critical. Sorry, come, and then I'll come back to you, sir. Yes.
Yes,
okay, sorry.
Well, I'll be short. I'm going to Mirage from the University of Technology, Jamaica, and I concur with my colleagues in this room. I think they have spoken what I had to say, but I believe from the perspective of education research that it ought to be purposeful and meaningful, and therefore action-oriented research will be more applicable to the discipline of education, and that will make it more readable and more accessible by those who really need to solve the problems. So maybe that's something you can look at as another step to your research to see what type of research would be more applicable to educators and to teachers' colleges.
Thanks. And also, I think, we want to stop doing action research because we need to do research.
Right.
We want to do action research because it is driven by a real issue we see in our classroom. And that's it's always in Jamaica, I hate to be critical, but we're always talking about the form rather than the function. We put all these lovely ideas in place, but we don't really think through why. Why is this important, So I don't know how much time we have. So you...
Oh,
yes,
sorry. Okay. I think that's my colleague. My name is Justin.
Yes.
Beg your pardon?
She thought she was next.
Oh, okay. You go next. That's fine.
You have many takers. Good morning. Carmen Ruth-Boyne, School of Education, UWI. I'm listening to the conversation and I'm really wondering if we have started it the wrong way. In that, what is it that we're defining as research? Are we trying to fit a particular group of people in a particular mold that already existed somewhere. I think what we need to do, research is important to the teacher educator, right? It is important to all of us who practice TVET, whatever area, but what research are we talking about? When we get into the business of talking about one track versus another track, I think we're talking about something different, because that relates to how people are promoted in spaces. I think we need to peel back and talk about research as what we do to help to understand what we're doing and how we function. We don't necessarily need to give it a label as action research, qualitative research, mixed methods, etc. But research that drives what we are doing, understanding the people who we are teaching, understanding the context within which we are operating. And so when we change the language that we use for research, I think people will start to feel differently about it. We're talking about research as this sophisticated thing, and it is not. So we need to peel back and look at what is that we, yes, it is not. Because when I was a teacher, I used to be so afraid of research for this very fact. People make it seem like this big thing, and if you do research, you're so bright and all of that. What we really need to do is to use the language. And I worked for a while at the University of Technology, charged with the responsibility of improving or enhancing the research culture. And so what I'm talking about is really out of my experience. Change the language and change how we talk about what we need to do. It's not a whip that we need to use to whip people into action, but it's something that is part of what you do because you're passionate about what you do. And if you do it and share it with others, it will be better. You can share it by presenting it somewhere, or you can share it by publishing it. And it doesn't have to follow all of these parameters that we talk. Yes.
So just quickly, Carmel, so I appreciate everything you're saying. And because I teach research methods, and and one of the things that I always say to people is it doesn't have to be, an investigation of the, of the impact of the phenomenon, whatever, on a selected sample of urban, rural. It's just so much. It can just be something about, why do some children use a blue pencil and some use a red pencil? Yes. And that can be so powerful. But many of the people that I teach, they don't think that, they're like, no, Dr. Gentles, you can't do that. It has to be, So what you're saying is exactly correct. It's helping our educators to understand. It's asking relevant and meaningful questions so that you're going to get relevant information that will drive your practice. So as you say, that changing the language is really important. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so we only have time for one more question.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Justin Pierre. I'm a researcher. I work for a company called Jamaican Associates in Toronto. And coming here, I was very interested in your presentation. I thought it was very informative. And I also want to concur with most of the responses with the whole idea of when we do research, it has to be functional. It has to be, there must be a purpose for it. Okay, we have the different languages, all these terms, the AP, all these things will impose on us. And we have to generate our own solutions for our research. Our research must be practical and must be able to solve a problem. Exactly. So, if it cannot solve a problem, it would not be beneficial. And I also want to say that that we also have to inform persons in terms of our culture. In fact, we are within a region here. We're not a culture of taking advice based on research. I mean, most of the population
even our policy.
We have policymakers. So our policymakers, our prime ministers, our minister of education, minister, we do not make it. We do not make decisions based on research. In fact, we've just done a project for the World Health Organization. So we just did. We interviewed like 28 countries, on migration, and even though the data is there. It's 12,000 people in the region. but yet, people have their own culture, And according to St. Augustine, they said that if you convince somebody against the will, they will have the same opinion. So we still have to, even though our research, we have to somewhat more or less, inform them and try to change their attitudes very, very, very slowly. And on average, it takes maybe 10 years to change the process of opinion. So we have a very, very long time. So I want to say that thank you for the presentation. I thought it was very informative. And like my gentleman, I definitely like to get a
Sure.
Dion Collins from Excelsior Community College, also student from the University of the West Indies. I'm in this room as an usher, and I'm listening to educators who are supposed to be agents of change. And I'm listening and I'm not hearing the persons putting forward the change. A lot of research, and somebody spoke to it earlier, sharing. Research are being done, but they are not shared. And persons, when we, as a student, and I want some information, everything that's available is from out of the region. And we have works here, but they're not available. And when persons see examples of what we consider simple research and whatever, that example would initiate probably a spirit saying, if that can pass and that can be written up, so my work can be presented as well. But the examples out there are not being published to be available and to initiate the change. Thank you.
Thank you very much for attending. Thank you.